There we go. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Brain and Body Warrior Live. Today I'm here with Sophie Guénon, we're gonna discuss, among other things, brain and gut health, which I'm very, very interested in. So that should be good. So first, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about your project. What's your area of expertise, etc., etc.
So I am a nutrition scientist, but also a certified detox specialist and gut restoration advisor. I help people with their gut health. I help them losing weight and overall improving their health and longevity. And so that's my project. I would love to do that full time.
Cool. Okay. I mean, the first thing I'm interested in what you just said there was gut restoration. Talk about this a little bit because I feel like maybe people wouldn't have a good feeling for what that means, why that's important. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the gut is really central to a lot of functions in our health, like, for instance, the immune system. It does support our immune function. It does support our mental health, which we will talk about. And obviously our digestion. A healthy gut makes sure that we can actually absorb the nutrients that we need for our health via the food. So, and the word restoration is because often we have problems with our gut where it starts being a little bit damaged, where we could have issues with a balance of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria in our gut. So our gut is populated with like trillions of bacteria, which we live with in symbiosis. So that's why it's so important to make sure that we can have a healthy gut. And that's where my role is when I work with people who have gut issues like irritable bowel syndrome or ulcerative colitis, etc. That's where I can help them restore that balance, remove that or minimize that permeability of the gut.
So on the back of that, the question that I have that I'm sort of most interested in is what key nutrients are most important for a healthy gut, I guess is the question I'm sort of wondering.
Yeah, a lot of different nutrients. It's all bacteria or gut bacteria are very hungry for, well, first of all, before even nutrients, it's the fibers. It loves the soluble fiber and the insoluble fiber as well. And that's what is needed for all good bacteria to really thrive. Don't know why my laptop went black. So for them to thrive, it needs antioxidants. It absolutely thrives on polyphenols, all those colorful vegetables, especially the red, the purple vegetables that are full of polyphenols. So the good bacteria love that.
Yeah, there's sort of three key words in there. So I think me and you talked about this before, but there's those kind of key buzzwords you hear in these health circles that you hear but you don't fully understand. And I think you just mentioned three of them there that I want to talk about. Fiber, both insoluble and soluble, and then antioxidants and polyphenols. So can you tell me a bit about each of those things?
So the fiber itself, that's quite important because that's what's needed to produce good molecules that will help then the body. So basically, that helps the bacteria to thrive, and the bacteria will transform all nutrients, all the food and the fiber into other molecules that will help the body create, like, for instance, other antioxidants. And I'm not sure how to explain it.
No, it's not okay.
But that will help transform what the other parts of the body can't do, and break down what we need for health. Really,
I think that's the part that maybe people are not aware of or maybe don't understand, like what you explained there, where basically it's like the fiber example. Certain bacteria will consume that and then excrete. I think it's called postbiotic, maybe. I think if that's the correct term. So they kind of create these things your body needs, like short-chain fatty acids and butyric acid and these kind of things, which are have many different beneficial, things. So it's I think that's the key, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of what we're talking about here today, what I'm most interested in is how this connects into mental health. Because I think for a lot of people, that's the connection they maybe don't understand or not aware of. How are these things connected?
Yeah, the gut and the brain are connected. It's a little bit like two rooms connected with a cable, like a phone cable, if you wish. So it's mainly connected via the vagus nerve, and the gut itself has its own nervous system, which is called the enteric nervous system, and they communicate with each other. And what's interesting is that the gut communicates much more to the brain than the brain to the gut.
Yeah, I remember reading that recently, and that sort of blew my mind, where it's like 80% of the traffic is going from the body to the brain, not the other way around, because you would assume it'd be the other way. But I remember reading that in a book a couple of months ago, and that really changed how I view a lot of things, actually. So that's a good point. You bring that up.
And what's really interesting is that imagine already how difficult it is when we are stressed, let's say going for an exam or going to an interview, and how it makes us feel like a knot in the stomach, or, we don't feel well, or we can have like GI issues and things like that. And it's only with like about 20% of that communication down to our gut. If it was the other way around, it would be impossible to leave our house. Like we would be like completely out of action. So in a way, it's a really good thing that our brain doesn't have as much effect on the gut, and more the other way around. But there is another concept that researchers are looking more and more into. So we talk a lot about the gut-brain axis, but more and more they are talking about the microbiota gut-brain axis. And it's like a three-way conversation. So not only the bidirectional between the gut and the brain, but the bacteria itself, so the colonies of bacteria or microbiota that basically transmit signals to the gut and the gut to the brain. So that's quite interesting. It's still in its infancy, or all those research, especially in humans, but it's very promising. A lot of it is in mice.
Okay. But if that is the case, how does that change the way we understand that?
Well, because at some point, I believe researchers were not sure if the bacteria itself were really needed. So they did some studies where they got rid of all bacteria in a mouse, for instance. And so it was the mice grew in an aseptic environment. and they had zero bacteria. And they found that they had a very elevated stress response all the time.
Okay.
So because they were not sure, like, okay, you have good bacteria, bad bacteria, but what about if you don't have any bacteria? So really the population of bacteria is actually really important and seem to be behaving almost independently from the gut lining. But that's still in its infancy.
I never heard
Still
that.
a lot.
Fascinating for a number of reasons, just like me thinking about it right now. I wonder, I don't know how to put this, like, I had the question, now I lost it. I was just literally thinking of as you were saying it, because I haven't heard that before, but that's quite fascinating. So, do you think that, well, I mean, in the case of this research, the researchers perhaps think that this lack of, like having no bacteria impacts the vagus nerve maybe, and it's just constantly turned on? Because I know the vagus nerve is responsible for like a lot of our flight or fight responses. So it's a case of like the body's communicating something's terribly wrong and they're just like in a stressed state all the time?
Probably, yeah.
That's, yeah.
And I guess maybe as well because there is no bacteria to create all the good molecules like the short chain fatty acids and the butyrate and all of that. So it is, I guess, interpreting it as a stress.
But, yeah, that's fascinating. Wow. But I mean, that perfectly leads into what we're here to talk about, which is the link between mental health and the gut. And that's a perfect segue in the sense that with no microbiome, in that research, these rats are basically constantly in a flight or fight mode.
That's right.
I mean, one, I guess, interpretation of that is that really being stuck in that mode is what anxiety is. So obviously there's some massive connection between the microbiome and then the sort of end mental health result, let's say. So, yeah.
That's right.
I guess
mental health.
Into that.
Mental health is not only in our mind or in our head, it's also heavily connected to our gut. And research have shown as well that when we give good bacteria to a mice population, it changes their stress response. So they will be less stressed, they will be more relaxed with the good bacteria. And with bad bacteria, they are a lot more stressed and anxious. So it definitely is something to not overlook when we are talking about mental health or following like a therapy. Obviously, it's very important, but that's not the only thing that should be looked at. We should also look after our gut, make sure that it's all in order so that it can support the mental health work with, for instance, therapy or something else.
I mean, I'm interested, and I don't know if you have the answer to this question or not, but in that particular kind of research, is there any specific strains of bacteria that they sort of isolated, or is it just sort of more general thing?
Yeah, there is a little bit of work on that, but it's still in its infancy. They are actually looking at calling them the psychobiotics. So looking for those specific strains of bacteria that are specifically good for mental health.
Okay.
I do not remember the names of any of them.
No, I'm just curious because I know some of the material I've looked at, different podcasts I've listened to over the journey, and a couple of things I've looked at will sometimes highlight very specific strains of bacteria. So one in particular that was, they did this study with superagers, these people who reach like 100 years old and they seem to be in robust health, and they looked at the composition of their microbiome as one of the things. And there was like 4 or 5 bacteria strains that they seemed to have in common across the board. The researcher I was listening to spoke about one in particular, which was Akkermansia, that apparently has these anti-inflammatory properties and a bunch of other things that come on the back of that. So Yeah, just curious. And I know L-reuteri is a big thing. I've seen these videos on YouTube where people are making like probiotic yogurt with L-reuteri, which is supposed to do a whole bunch of different things. It's good for oxytocin levels and testosterone for men on extension of reducing stress and all this kind of stuff. Supposedly, but again, isolating those things maybe doesn't.
Yeah, there's
Like
there's very little trials on humans, so it's still in its infancy. But yeah, the more we study it, the more we will know if it's really efficient, and also like, do we just need one, or do we need the combination? Like, do they live themselves in synergy? That's something that still need to be studied. But yeah, that's quite interesting. The way they call them as well, the psychobiotics.
Yeah,
and they will find
I
something.
wouldn't know, but yeah, I'm just curious because I know people always kind of look for that like silver bullet. Where like, this is the one. This is the which I guess we can maybe talk about in more detail. Maybe that doesn't work exactly, but it's always fascinating when people find these things and go, well, this particular thing does this and this particular thing does that. Like, wow, okay, that's really, I mean, the human body is amazing. It blows my mind. This is why I do this project, because it's so endlessly fascinating how these things, how incredibly amazing and efficient, and how these things work so synergistically. And it's just,
yeah, it's incredible.
Trial and error evolution. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But back to the mental health, gut mental health connection. So I'm interested in this because looking back on some of the things that I have dealt with, which for those who maybe don't follow this channel, one of those things in particular was sort of like anxiety. And what I sort of noticed looking back was when things are at their worst, my diet probably wasn't great. And when I started to eat differently, things seemed to get better. Now, that was in conjunction with a bunch of other things that happened sort of simultaneously. So I don't think that's the one thing, but I also think that that did make a big difference. And I had this sort of moment listening to a podcast a very long time ago, a couple of years ago, where it was a researcher talking about, well, a lot of mental health problems are probably just physical health problems masquerading under that name. And the two examples she gave, which said, A, vitamin D deficiency can look like depression. And
Absolutely.
B, magnesium deficiency can look like anxiety. And as it so happens, coincidentally, a lot of people, especially in the developed world, are deficient in these minerals. Is that a coincidence? Oh, wow, okay, that made me think very differently. So I'm interested in this connection here.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of association with those. We can't really tell yet if there is causation, but there is a strong association. And it's funny you say that, because a lot of people who have depression have that in common, that deficiency in vitamin D. And even like for myself, I remember when I was in my previous job where I was very stressed, not realizing I was stressed, but always on high alert.
Yeah.
I'm the type of person who always look at the glass half full. And then at some point I was seeing the glass half empty, and I thought, that's not me. And then I started supplementing in vitamin D3, and then boop, suddenly
Totally
went back to normal.
Yeah, I guess it's that connection you make, right? And the same thing, I sort of think about certain things the way they were. I'm like, well, that was probably part of the problem. But also, so maybe you can talk about this a bit. Are there certain like eating patterns or behaviors that would deplete key minerals? Because I think there's also this as well. So it's not only not getting enough of something, it's that certain behaviors and certain ways we consume food actually deplete certain minerals, right?
Yes.
Like pasta.
Yeah. So, for instance, drinking alcohol, smoking, things like that. That's not gonna help getting the nutrients from the food. And also it obviously destroys the gut. And the problem is that so our gut lining is a little bit like a wall with very well sealed gates, and at each gate there is a gatekeeper who only lets through the visitors who have the right visa, for instance. And the problem is that with a poor diet, so high carb, high sugar, very fatty diet, for instance, and alcohol, all of that starts damaging the seal of the gates, if you wish. And it's a little bit like the gates are now ajar, and the toxins are going through when they are not supposed to go through. So we have a very good system that allows the right nutrients to come in and close the door to the toxins, for instance. And that's the permeability of that gut lining that then is increased, and that's what we call as well leaky gut. So that means that the gates are not closed properly and toxins can get in. And with that as well, with that dysbiosis, so where not only the wall is damaged, but also the bad bacteria are starting to take over the good bacteria, then we don't absorb nutrients as well. And also with age, I have to say with age, there is, like when you're over 60, we tend to absorb nutrients less efficiently than when we are younger. And there are also some medications, like my dad, for instance, is on metformin, and he has a deficiency in vitamin B12 because it competes with vitamin B12. So on top of being 82 and not absorbing nutrients as well as someone younger, the medication is also impairing that. So depending on the medications you are taking, depending on your age, depending on what you eat and drink, like all the fruit juices as well, the soft drinks and all of that damages your gut. And also something important to remember is that all those sweets, any sweets, and especially the soft drinks and fruit juices, that helps the bad bacteria grow. And you know, as we were talking about the mental health, but it's also activating the reward loop. And when you have a lot of sugary drinks and food, you are growing more bad bacteria, and those bad bacteria are telling your brain more of that. So you have more and more cravings.
I see. This is the fascinating thing. I often wonder why the body works in that way. Because you would think that given that has a negative net result, that it wouldn't be so rewarding. But it's this weird thing where behaviors like that, which are ultimately long-term, probably very damaging, have a short-term reward. I wonder why.
I heard that when we were, how do you call them? The gatherers, the hunter-gatherers. We didn't always have, obviously, sweet food. So we were getting our hand on some sweet food. It would call for more, so we would get more energy at the time. So it was probably a survival mechanism, I would say.
I mean, that makes sense. I'm guessing that in nature, I mean, processed sugar is not natural, so I guess it sort of maybe tricks our brain a bit, but I'm assuming that in terms of a natural context, something like honey, for example, which is, I guess, basically pure sugar and a carbohydrate that gives you quick energy, sustained, unlike, processed sugar. But I'm assuming that's something to do with that, where it's like a high calorie energy boost that your body's like, yep, okay, that's good for getting through here and now, which I guess the body's concerned with mostly, or the brain's mostly concerned with.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that sort of makes sense.
Hmm.
Cool. I mean, I just want to kind of like quickly summarize all the stuff we talked about to lead into something else, but I want to make sure I've kind of got it all and just to convey it to everyone else. So essentially, what you're saying is the vagus nerve connects the brain to the gut. Most of the communication comes from the body. Now, if your gut is feeling off because you've eaten something bad and there's an imbalance of bacteria, it's going to communicate to your brain that something's not right and activate your stress response. And you were saying if there's no bacteria, then the stress response is amped up even more. So this is kind of one of the key links. What about neurotransmitters as well? Because I know this is a big thing in terms of the connection between the brain and the gut. So maybe you can cover that as well.
Yeah, so it's very important, obviously, to eat proteins because neurotransmitters are made from the amino acids from the proteins, and the bacteria in our gut will break down those proteins into amino acids that can be used to make the neurotransmitters. So, and then the neurotransmitters obviously are used in the body and especially in the brain. But there is something else I forgot to say with the stress as well. I just want to make sure that people understand that it's a loop. So we will be stressed mentally because of external stressors or anything. That's really more how we interpret things, and that stresses us. So that would raise our cortisol. And the cortisol, if we have too much for too long, will start damaging our bacteria, or good bacteria, or the good strains and bacteria. And in turn, then that will create more stress. And so a vicious cycle. So the more our gut is damaged, the more stressed we are. And then the more stressed we are, the more we damage our gut.
That's the question I was going to ask before, but we didn't quite get back to that. But yeah, thank you for explaining that, because I wanted to ask you about that exact thing.
Yeah. So it's not just one without the other. That's what I want to drive home.
Yeah.
It's really connected, and we need both. And so we are talking about food, but it's also important, for instance, to have like good stress reduction practices also to help our gut. So, for instance, meditation could be listening to music, having a warm bath, having, I don't know, a 10-second hug, spending time with pets, whatever can help us relax. That's really important for our gut. And also exercising. Our gut microbiota loves when we exercise.
Just not marathon running, apparently. That's a bit too much.
Yeah. No, so excessive, and that's the balance. Excessive exercise also damages the gut. So it's a fine balance.
I know. I love to run. I've run a marathon in the past, and I remember reading somewhere, I think it was Dr. Daniel Amen, who I absolutely love, who had a list of things like that are bad for your gut microbiome, maybe, and one of them was like ultra marathons. I was like,
Yeah, and if you do it all the time, yes, but there are ways to help as well.
Just to run back to the neurotransmitters, just for people who don't quite understand that term, so basically what you're explaining is that a lot of these neurotransmitters are made from amino acids that come in through the gut. So as an example, 95% of serotonin or something like that I read is created in the gut. Now, serotonin is what they give people who are depressed to elevate their mood. Now, whether that works or not, there's a lot of contentious stuff about that. But they're literally giving them that thing that's made in your gut. Now, if your gut is a dysbiosis, you said you're not making that thing. But neurotransmitters are basically how your brain communicates. Now, if your body's not making the correct neurotransmitters in the right balance, it's going to impact the way your brain communicates. within
Yeah,
itself and with the rest of your body, which is obviously not good for your mental health. So there's another connection there that I think is very important for people to understand.
yeah, absolutely. They are messengers, basically.
Yeah.
Those little neurotransmitters.
Now, the one thing I'm most interested to link into all this, because this is my experience, is sleep. So I might have written about this before, I think, but for, I don't know, a good 4 or 5 years on and off, I just had constant issues with sleep. And sometimes it was really bad and sometimes not too bad. It's much better now, but there's a point where it's really, really bad. And I did everything, like everything, blue blocking glasses, put in the, what do they call it? Not blindfold, the night thing on at night so you can't see any light, and like getting out and getting sunlight in the morning, and like everything, and just did nothing worked. All the shit you read online was like, do this, do this, do this. I'm like, yeah, I've already read those 5 tips before and they don't fucking work. Like, I need something different. And the more I dug into this rabbit hole, the kind of worse it got, in the sense that it's like, well, now it could be this and now it could be that. And, I heard like, you need B1 before you go to bed, or you need vitamin D, or that can mess up your sleep, or vitamin C deficiency. I'm like, this is just too much shit for me. I can't do this. But what I found is slowly over a couple of months, it sort of got better, and it was, better. And I was talking to my friend about it. I said, so what did you do to fix that? And I literally, I don't know. Because I tried so many different things. I'm like, I don't know what actually worked. But looking at it, I think what I kind of isolated was improving my diet. Not that my diet was bad before that, but I just added a bunch of things like a lot of fermented foods like sauerkraut, grass-fed meat, cooked with a lot with grass-fed butter. I even make, Dave Asprey has this recipe in one of his books, brain rice, which my son absolutely loves. Cook rice in the rice cooker with coconut oil, and then cook it in butter, like a lot of butter, a ton of butter, after the rice is cooked. And my son loves it too. It's great. He goes, oh, Dad, make me some brain rice. Okay, cool. Which is great, but I noticed that that's the thing that I made the most significant changes with. I was like, well, there's got to be some connection there, and I'm assuming it's the gut and something to do with sleep. How does that all tie in? Because this is what I'm most fascinated with, because I haven't quite worked that out yet. But I know there's something there because I've lived that.
Yes, yeah, it does have an effect on sleep as well. So having obviously a healthy gut helps our mood, but also our sleep. Having sunlight in the morning, that helps as well set, all your hormones for the day. And having a healthy diet through the day, that will also control your hormones and your blood sugar. If you don't have as much like sugary things, like drinks and sugary foods, you will obviously help your good bacteria. And so all of that will help your sleep.
It's funny you're talking about the loop, and I was just thinking about this just now. So blood sugar is the interesting one, right? So one of the things that I read that I don't know if this is, I can't remember where I got this from, but it was like, well, one of the things that can cause people to wake up in the night is drops in blood sugar, because your brain needs a lot of glucose to go through. I think it's especially the back end of sleep, there's a lot of REM sleep. Your brain activity is quite high, so it needs a lot of glucose. So it's basically going to wake you up if your blood sugar crashes, like, oh, we're going to eat something to do this, to get through this process. But then constantly waking up creates stress, which then affects the microbiome, which then affects, it's like this loop of all these things that just like constantly affect one another.
Yeah, having, so if you wake up a lot at night, try having a dinner with low glycemic index carbs. That will help you sleep through the night better.
Yeah, because blood sugar. Yeah, I find that
it's more steady.
A bunch of places, and I've tried this, and sometimes it's worked for me, sometimes it hasn't. So I'm not sure how it exactly plays out. But raw honey before bed is an absolute. I've read this in a lot of places where apparently it spikes your blood sugar and it stays at quite a high level. So
yeah.
not the crash, where that's the bit that wakes you up, apparently. So
yeah, that's right.
But occasionally, if I've eaten something
Yeah,
particularly high glycemic index, I'll just eat honey right before I go to bed to balance it out. I don't know if that works, but that's what I do.
the high glycemic index before bed or at dinner will help you fall asleep quicker. However, it's likely to wake you up during the night.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So really, people need to pick their battle. If you really have difficulties falling asleep, then you can try some high glycemic food. And if you want to prioritize sleeping through the night, then you would have low glycemic index foods.
I sort of think what I often do, not necessarily by choice, just because of circumstance, but it does work, is like the sooner you eat dinner, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm not here as much because it's a bit different, but if I'm working in Australia, where I would normally be, my class starts at 5 o'clock and I don't finish till 9:15. So I usually have dinner at like 4:30 and then don't eat after. And that, I find, makes a bit of a difference as well. Like, eat earlier, and it just, makes a big difference.
Yeah, you have time to digest. Your body has finished worrying about your digestion when you go to sleep.
I mean, this is based purely on my simple understanding of things, but it just seems like, looking at the way most of our biology works, we're not meant to eat at nighttime. Humans are not designed to do that, I don't think.
Well, we shouldn't. I mean, it depends. It depends on the person.
That's true too.
But often, if you eat earlier, you are and not too heavily, you are likely to sleep better. But for some people, it works to eat late, especially if they don't eat very heavy. It can be okay as well.
But I've also heard this argument, and again, this is maybe outside the realm of your expertise, but I'm just interested in your opinion because we're sort of on this topic now. I read about this a couple of months ago where someone was talking about eating in line with your genetics and your DNA, in the sense that if you come from a certain region or a certain place and your genetics and DNA are linked to a certain place, like, it makes sense to eat food that your ancestors have been eating forever, because your body would expect that. And I thought, well, that sort of makes sense. And again, if you're from South Asia compared to Europe, a totally different diet would work for you. You know what I mean? So it's not like, it's not a one-fits-all thing, I don't think.
No, it's not. And we have to be careful as well with genetics, because it doesn't do everything. Epigenetics is actually a lot more powerful than the genetics itself. So just by our environment, the way we live, what we eat, what we do, it's going to turn on or off our genes. And two people with the same genetics could turn out very different, because they live differently. And so even like someone with like genetical issues that will create, let's say, a higher risk of certain disease, for instance, then if their diet and their lifestyle allows to turn off those genes, they may not have any problem, for instance. So I'm not sure there has been many studies on that in terms of nutrition based on genetics.
Nutrition is a study, unfortunately. It's
very difficult.
I mean, it seems almost impossible just with the number of factors and all the things you have to take into consideration. But it's interesting to talk about that, because it's that classic example that people go to, where it's like you could have. I remember watching a video online. I think it was America's last World War II veteran. The guy was like 110, and he said, I smoke a cigar every day. They lived to 110. I'm like, dude, if I smoked a cigar every day, I'd probably be dead in like 10 years. But you know what I mean? It's just, there's something like that at play, where it's like whatever you're doing is maybe turning on or off certain genes that affect cancer or whatever it is. Maybe I don't have that ability, or maybe I do. I don't know. I don't smoke, so I haven't tried that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting how sort of two people can do very similar things and somehow the results are totally different. And even with diets too, like for certain people they try like, I don't know, keto or carnivore, whatever it is, and it works great. And then other people do it, they're like, oh no, that's not good.
Yeah,
Different response.
definitely.
So the other thing we sort of covered in the pre-talk we did that I'm interested to dive in now is supplementation, because you talked about how being nutrient deficient can impact your gut health as well as your mental health. We covered vitamin D and magnesium before and that kind of stuff. Many people would go to supplementation to kind of cover those deficiencies, perhaps. What's your take on that, I guess?
I rarely recommend supplementation because it's like trying to repaint a room in your house when the foundation is completely crumbling. That's not going to help the house stay together. So the first thing that I recommend people to do is looking at the foundation, which is the diet, the lifestyle, and trying to rebuild from there, rebuild the nutrients from there, including the probiotics, like you were saying with the fermented food, but also the prebiotics with all the fiber, so all the veggies and the fruits. And then after that, depending on blood test results or even symptoms, we can look at, okay, is there a particular deficiency that is not being improved with nutrition only? And then we can really specifically target that deficiency. So for instance, for my dad, because of his medication and because of his age, and also the reason why I've put him on vitamin B12 is because he has anemia, and doctors can't find why he's losing red blood cells so quickly. So the past 6 months he's been having a blood transfusion and iron infusion every quarter. And he's having EPO injections. So, the drug EPO that cyclists used to take for, which is obviously illegal, but that's because it boosts the production of red blood cells.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
So he gets his EPO injection every 2 weeks, which is not good because he used to have it once a month and then it just gets worse and worse. And so we are doing a little experiment on himself, and he does a blood test every 2 weeks, and just after a week of that supplementation, his red blood cells are higher than 2 weeks ago when he had the EPO injection. So it's really encouraging. So we are gonna see what happens in the next 2 weeks. But yeah, in that case, it made sense to do that because I know that vitamin B12, for instance, is part of the process to make the red blood cells. So B9 and B12 are key components to creating red blood cells. So the B9, he gets it from and other B vitamins from the food. But the B12, given he's taking metformin, that's why we supplement him. So obviously I've worked with his doctor to do that, to make sure that there was no contraindications with anything else that is in his treatment. So it's really as a complement to his treatment and support that. So there are times where supplementation is required, but it's never the first thing I look at. Always the lifestyle and the food. There's so much we can do with the diet that really, and even with people of health where they were eating pretty healthy or they thought they were, but then they forget that, on the way to work in the car, I stop at McDonald's, or I stop at KFC, or I stop at the Servo and get chocolates or things like that. And then it just ruins everything else they are doing.
I just appreciate the fact, as an Australian, you said servo. So
Yeah.
because other people probably won't get that service station, petrol station.
Service station, yeah.
That's an Aussie thing. I like. I mean, supplements for me are an interesting one because I've tried a lot of different things. And again, especially going back to the sleep issue, that's where I dived into a lot of different things. And some things actually did work. So I do feel like there's a place for that. I'd say in particular for me now, anyone who's struggling with sleep out there, the two things that I did that seemed to work well together was St. John's wort and magnesium glycinate. Those are the two things that made a huge difference. So I sort of think there is room
There's a
for
place for it. Yeah, there's a place for it.
But it is overkill sometimes. I don't know. It's a hard one to find the right balance. And there's obviously this whole debate about, how much nutrients is really in the food because it's shipped so far, and issues with the soil, and da. And there's obviously certain things that are not the way they should be. And I think the overall health of the population is maybe showing that. So for me, that's a difficult one to kind of look at. And as we talked about before, there's also the problem with regulation around the supplementation industry as well, which is a common thing I've heard time and time again, where, a lot of these things either don't contain as much as they say, or contain way too much of something, which again can be dangerous depending on what it is. So there's a lot of nuance in that. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So it's supplements are regulated the same way food is regulated, which is very, very little when you think about putting something in a pill. So we have to be really careful, and there are lots of things to consider in the supplement: the way it's made, the type of supplement. Is it a pill? Is it a liquid? What you take it with, because there are other supplements that can negate the effect of another vitamin, or they can promote each other. So, for instance, vitamin B12, it's great when it's enhanced when you have it with other vitamin B, B vitamins, sorry. And so all of those things, and also are they kept in the heat? Are they kept in a fridge? The transport, so just in transport, the supplier, if the manufacturer has done some testing, which is not a lot, not often, then they could have the right quantity, the right dosage when it leaves the factory. But when it gets to your home, maybe half of it is gone. So you don't really know what you are getting either. So it's difficult to choose the right supplements for that reason. And yes, look, they have their place. I think they need to be looked at as a second option. Vitamin D3 obviously is one that the majority of the population is deficient in. So having that regularly helps the majority of the population. But apart from that one, everything else needs to be personalized, and often it needs to be taken in a short period of time. And once your symptoms improves, you should stop it, and then you can start taking it when it starts. You start having symptoms again, because in between you could also, sometimes supplements are good to just bring your level back up to an optimal level. And then the nutrients from your food just take over and are able to maintain that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things that I'm sort of not all that sure about. I've dived into it. I'm also a bit on the other side, so it's like, I don't know.
It needs to be really personalized. That's why I don't talk too much in my newsletter about individual nutrient, vitamins or minerals, because people tend to take everything in isolation, and then they go quick, go to the pharmacy and get that. But there are lots of things to consider, and also it can be dangerous with some medications. It's not necessarily harmless because it's a supplement, and because you can just buy it over the counter, that doesn't mean that it's harmless. So always to talk to your doctor about it before you buy anything like that.
It's I think of it as like a sledgehammer, where you can kind of be precise about things, or you can just kind of grab something and like smash it. It's a bit of it's a bit like that, really. It's like it requires precision understanding, but if you're just sort of like, well, this is the one thing, and I'm going to like get on that, probably not good.
Yeah,
but
that's why. Sorry. That's why I often, when I start working with someone, I often start with a detox, the real one, not the fads, because that really helps look at the lifestyle, look at the environment, look at the sleep, the hydration, the diet, and it's very nutritious. And it helps, as we were talking about the gut, it helps take care of the gut. It helps repair the gut as well. So that's a little bit of a full cycle, so you detox the right way. You help your gut. That's going to help your mental health. And obviously your gut is going to help your immune system. It's going to help fight against cancers, etc.
Well, talk more about the sort of work you do, because I'm sure people would be interested to know. And even just me sitting here, I'm interested to know more about that. So you work as a coach helping people do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What does that process look like?
Yeah, so I work with people usually one-on-one. I haven't started doing group coaching. So the first thing we look at is really what is detracting, what is overloading your body, especially your liver. We have a wonderful kit in our body to help us detox every single day, every single hour. But the capability of or the ability of our liver is not endless. It's finite. So, for instance, if we drink a lot of alcohol, then our liver gets overloaded, and it doesn't treat everything else as well. So it's just like having a backlog of toxins, and it really struggles to eliminate the toxins. So I often recommend that even for weight loss, because it helps start losing weight safely.
Okay.
Because, for instance, in fat cells, we often forget that it's where the body, if the body could not eliminate fat-soluble toxins, that's where it's going to be stored.
Yeah, right, okay.
And look, every now and then the body releases those toxins into the bloodstream anyway, even if you're not detoxing. And that's where it creates inflammation, like especially the visceral fat, for instance, the fat that's wrapped around the organs. That's really the worst one. That's the most dangerous. It secretes molecules that create inflammation in your entire body. So that's why as well losing weight is important for overall health and inflammation and reducing the risk of disease. So when I do the weight loss, I often recommend that we start with the detox, because we look at all the foundational items. We look at the sleep. So for instance, good sleep is actually the brain detox with the glymphatic system. But also like the hydration, because you need obviously to hydrate to eliminate via the urine. But also you need hydration to feed to make with the fibers to make like a bit of slime, if I can say. And that's what is going to catch the toxins as well and get them out via the stools. So all of that is really important. And so we work on that and make sure that the weight loss is done safely, because when we start losing weight at the beginning, those fat cells will start emptying the toxins as well with it. So you want to make sure that you have all the right nutrients, all the right fibers, all the right hydration to eliminate that safely so it doesn't get reabsorbed in the bloodstream. And that's what really, really annoys me with those TikTok juice cleanses, because that's completely counterintuitive. It's giving way too much sugar to start with. So as we were talking about earlier, it's actually feeding the bad bacteria. And then on top of it, it creates like massive blood glucose spikes, which is really bad for your body. It creates inflammation. It is completely stripped of fiber. So any toxins that you may be releasing is going to be reabsorbed straight away in the bloodstream. So it's actually intoxicating you and not detoxifying you. So I'm really trying to fight against those, because it's really damaging. And often people, when I talk about detox, those who know that juice cleanses are bad, they're like, oh my God, what are you doing? But no, I'm doing the opposite of that. And often people eat a lot more when they do the detox than before, and they still lose weight because they eat all the right foods. There's also something else, because we are talking about the gut microbiome, something else I wanted to warn people about, that I've seen a study recently that was talking about 7-day water fasts. And I know that, fasting is quite trendy, and there are many, many different ways of doing fasting. But doing a 7-day water fast, the study that I've seen has shown that it completely destroys your gut microbiome. So all your good bacteria are completely dead. And it takes 3 months to rebuild it. That's what they found in their study.
I mean,
with a water fast. There are other ways to do fasting. But for 7 days, that's completely destroyed the gut.
But, well, I'd heard that like 3 to 5 days is actually beneficial if you do. Because for me anyway, like, it makes intuitive sense that our ancestors lived in a very resource-scarce environment. So it makes sense that people could go for a couple of days without eating, and it wouldn't be damaging. Like, I forget who I saw talking about it. It was talking about like 3 days, where it's like after the third day, it's like all these things happen. You're just like sharp and on top of it, which to me makes sense, because like, well, that would be your body's way of sharpening you up to go and find food.
Yeah, maybe.
So after you've starved yourself a lot, it's like, okay, cool, I've got to switch something on, so I'm like ready to actually like go out and do stuff. So that makes sense. That's interesting. Might be the case. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about 3 days. And look, it's the study was with 7 days, so obviously a lot longer. Also, something to keep in mind is that you always need to weigh the benefits and the detriments. For instance, when you're not eating, like we need protein every day. Yeah. So we need protein to make neurotransmitters and all of that. If the body doesn't have the protein it needs every day, it's going to find the protein somewhere else. And that somewhere else is our muscles. So we are going to break down muscles to use those building blocks for other things. So we just have to weigh things. And also people with diabetes, for instance, is really not recommended, obviously. So it's not for everyone. And again, the way it's done can be beneficial or detrimental.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to a guy. I used to sit with this parent. My son does a swimming lesson. He's got a friend that he's swimming lesson, and me and his dad used to sit together and talk. And he was, as it turns out, he was big into health. Once I found that out, obviously doing what I do here, I was like, "You're like my new best friend." Let's talk about it. And he was talking about a 5-day fast that he did, and he said, "Oh, you feel amazing after doing that." Like, and goes, "Yeah, but you want to be careful with electrolytes and this and that." And he was telling me all about it. He laid it all out for us. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I think like anything, it's a tool that has its place, but you don't want to get
The
it
weight
wrong.
again is very personalized. Yeah, and he did it with electrolytes. He didn't do it just with water.
Yeah, okay, that's the difference. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, well, the study was with water, so just water. So also you can have electrolytes imbalance, which can be actually very dangerous, for your heart and everything. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
we
assume
should not play with those without medical supervision.
Because I assume if you're just drinking water, that would deplete potassium and sodium, among other things, wouldn't it? So that would be
that can be quite dangerous.
cool. Okay, I might wrap it up because it's been about an hour.
Yes, it's been an
Keep
hour.
you too long, but anything you'd like to say to finish up, to sort of come back to the point, or anything else you want to add before we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, just to finish, because we were talking about the gut health and mental health, so both are interconnected. It's like a feedback loop. There is not one without the other. So take good care of your gut, and it's gonna take good care of your mental health, and vice versa.
I think that's probably the most important thing, and for me, like, that's my frustration, is watching people consume some really horrible things and then wondering why they feel awful. I'm like, well, dude, you gotta like give the Red Bull away or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What you eat really matters, I think, and this is what I've
absolutely
worked
Food
out.
is medicine.
Well, I sort of wrote something about this the other day somewhere, but I sort of think it's an underrated mental health tool. And again, that's why I'm talking about this here, because if you were to see a psychiatrist or, a therapist or whatever to deal with what you perceive to be mental health problems, say it's anxiety or depression or anything like that, obviously there's different categories of these things. So the more extreme things I'm not talking about here. But a lot of the things that more of the average person is starting to experience, like anxiety and depression and these kind of things, if you go and see a therapist or a psychiatrist or whatever, they're not going to ask you about what you're eating. They're not going to ask about your sleeping habits. They're going to ask, they're going to get you to talk about things, say, we might need this medication or that or whatever it is. Where I think food's an underrated part of this. And as we've talked about today, what you eat affects how your brain works. What you eat affects how you sleep. What you eat affects how your body creates all the right proteins and all this stuff. Like, all of the body systems seem to come back to that thing and the gut and that connection. So I think it's a really undervalued, underrated kind of tool in mental health space. Is food, for sure. So that's why
I agree.
I wanted to talk about today, and I was excited to let's really dive into this.
It's really complementary to a therapy, for instance.
Yeah.
You should not go without it. Yeah. It would support it. If with the right nutrition, it would support the work of a therapy, for instance.
But I also wonder in a lot of cases whether those things aren't even strictly necessary in the first place. You know what I mean? If you just
potentially as well, yeah.
Thing as well. And that's sort of what my project revolves around here, is like taking control of your own health and kind of understand these things for yourself, which a couple of the mental health organizations that I've tried to be involved with really don't like that message, and often get there's a couple of ones I applied for. I wanted to do a course or be a speaker for a particular organization in Australia, and just an online form, and I said, explain your story, and I explained my story. I said, not suitable for us. I'm like, well, you're talking about lived mental health experiences. I have one. And I thought, I was like, yeah, but you don't like the fact I worked this out for myself because you think that everyone should go a certain way, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, but I honestly believe that, us as individuals have a lot more power with our own health and well-being than we think sometimes. But it's about understanding. It's about understanding things we talked about today. It's about understanding lots of different things from me. And that's what this is all about, to kind of convey that, well, this is what I've worked out, dealing what I'm dealing with. And I think, and that's not to say it doesn't have its place, getting help if you need it. But at the same time, I wonder how much of that is completely unnecessary if people just fixed a few key things before going down that route. I don't know if we talked about it with someone else, but someone was talking about chasing complexity but ignoring simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
So you look for these complex.
That's a good saying. Yeah.
Doing the stuff that's in front of you. So yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about this. I do think that's very, very important.
It's going back to what I was saying earlier, trying to address the foundation first before going into supplements, before going into therapy or medication. Like, what are the key fundamental blocks that we are not addressing at all? And the medication or the therapy maybe just becomes treating the symptoms, but not necessarily always the cause. I mean, probably for the therapy, it would address the cause, but for medication, it's often the symptoms and not the cause.
Yeah.
So it's like a Band-Aid.
I don't know if
it's like my dad at the moment. All the medications are just symptomatic.
I'm just going to talk about this quickly because it was just in this book I was reading. So anyway, this is the book.
Yeah, nice.
I was just reading this the other day because I'm going to do a deep dive into the vagus nerve as a part of this program. He was talking about mental health and food. I just want to find the bit because this sort of ties in perfectly what we're talking about. Where is that? There it is. SMILES trials. It's about research into how the Mediterranean diet affects depression symptoms. And in this case, they were saying that, where's the key bit? Yeah, the study showed that people in the dietary intervention group experienced a greater reduction in symptoms of depression over a 3-month period compared to those who had given social support, simply social support.
Absolutely, I'm not surprised.
That sort of ties into what we're talking about exactly. I'm glad that was just sitting. That was good.
Yeah, because the Mediterranean diet has lots of good protein, lots of good fats, the omega-3s, and lots of fiber with the vegetables and the fruits. It's all what the gut needs. So, it works.
And basically, and probably this is your position as well, I feel like for me, that's exactly why I keep bashing people over the head with this information. Like, just fucking really think about what you're eating. And it's this weird culture of like, if you don't eat a certain way, people think you're strange. If you don't drink alcohol, people think you're strange. If you don't do all these unhealthy things, like, we've got to live life and enjoy life. It's like, but that's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I really can't wrap my head around that.
I had a client recently. He's had inflammation for years, and he goes to see a naturopath, which has helped in many ways. She gives him a blood test to do every now and then. And after we did the detox together and resetting his habits, and look, he was eating pretty okay, like quite healthily. But really diving into what he was missing and what he was not seeing he was having that was bad, because it was not at the dinner table or not at the lunch table. Then he when he did the blood test at the end of the detox, he actually had his best blood tests ever. Like the inflammation markers were very low. And now he's kept doing it, and so he's looking forward to seeing as well his next blood test. He's lost 8 kilos, So he's, really happy.
So just to finish, like, if anyone out there might be interested, if people are interested in doing this with you or being, working with you through coaching and this kind of stuff, where can they find your information?
Yeah, they can just go on Wellness with Sophie, and they can direct message me. We'll be happy to help.
Oh, I don't want to keep you too much longer because that's a bit more than now. So
thank you. That was a great conversation.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Again, as I said to you when we did the initial pre-conversation, like, it just was very fortuitous that you sort of popped up just as I was thinking about this topic in great detail, and food and anxiety and all this. I was just really starting to think about this, and you popped up. I was like, oh, that would be the perfect person to speak to right now. I'm glad we got the chance to do it, so thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you, everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.